I have schizophrenia, and my sister-in-law keeps whispering at me, trying to drive me insane. My wife, Clara, is on her side. Ever since Nadia moved into our house, I felt like she's been trying to push me over the edge. It started with her whispering, and when I asked her what she said, she'd pretend to be worried and say nothing. The voices only seem to occur when she's around, and before she moved in, I hadn't experienced anything like this in a long time. Months passed, and her whispers continued, leading to my first breakdown. I silently cried in bed, telling myself, "It's just her. I'm not insane." But then, just weeks later, I had a second breakdown. When I confided in Clara, she looked worried, not because she thought her sister was doing this, but because of what she feared might be happening to me. She kept insisting that Nadia would never do such a thing. But her reassurances only made me more anxious. The whispers I heard when Nadia was nearby felt too real, too frequent to ignore. I started watching her closely, noting how she often muttered to herself when she thought no one was looking, and how she lingered in doorways, lost in thought. I paid more attention to the sounds in our home, trying to catch clear words or phrases from Nadia that would prove I wasn't imagining things. But the more I listened, the less I understood, hearing only bits that made no sense. Clara's frustration grew as she saw me becoming more withdrawn and obsessed with proving that Nadia was whispering. Months went by, and even though I was taking my meds and seeing my psychiatrist regularly, the whispers persisted. My doctor adjusted my medications several times to subdue what was diagnosed as auditory hallucinations, but nothing seemed to help. Each tweak brought a flicker of hope that quickly faded as the murmurs continued. The more I heard, the more I scrutinized Nadia's every action, every whisper, every subtle glance. I was convinced she was whispering just low enough for me to hear, but without enough clarity for me to confront her directly. I could feel Clara watching my condition worsen, sensing her growing concern. Initially, she dismissed my accusations as symptoms of my illness, trusting her sister completely. But as my fixation on Nadia's supposed whispers intensified, so did the tension in our home. Clara found herself torn between her loyalty to her sister and her commitment to support me. One evening, the situation escalated dramatically. While walking down the hallway, I heard it, a whisper clearer than ever, unmistakably from Nadia. My heart pounded as I rounded the corner into the kitchen, where I found her, a glass of water in hand, seemingly oblivious to my presence. I couldn't hold back any longer. I yelled at her, demanding she quit the charade and admit it was her whispering to me. I asked her why she was doing this, and what she could possibly gain from it. She acted like she didn't know what I was talking about, and began to cry, running out of the house. I panicked, knowing she would call Clara. Clara hates it when she gets calls while at work, and I could only imagine how mad she would be when she found out about my confrontation. Nadia didn't come back until Clara pulled into the driveway. My heart raced at the thought of what Nadia could have told her. If she would lie about the whispers, what else could she lie about? Clara walked inside and told me she was struggling to understand everything happening. I tried to share my side of the story, but she insisted I let her finish. She said it broke her heart to see me suffer, but it was just as hard to hear such serious accusations against Nadia. As I tried to tell her the truth, she said she didn't want us to lose what we had over something that might be my illness misleading us. Throughout this conversation, Nadia was behind her, crying and nodding her head in agreement. I couldn't believe how far she would take this lie. What was in it for her? I felt like this was all part of some sick, twisted game she was playing. I agreed to leave it at that, knowing that if I said anything in that moment, it would come from a place of anger, and Clara wouldn't really hear me. I waited until the next day, after I had calmed down, to speak to Clara about Nadia. I tried to explain my side, to convey how the whispers were affecting me deeply. Clara listened, but ultimately decided that my issues were too complex for us to handle alone. She suggested I needed more specialized help than what could be provided at home. The idea of being admitted to a psychiatric ward was jarring. It felt like a drastic step, but it also acknowledged the gravity of my mental state. The thought of being sent away from Clara to a hospital made me feel like she was giving up on me. I didn't want to go, and when I tried to tell her, we ended up having a big argument. We both felt strongly and couldn't agree, which only made things worse. Instead of continuing to argue, I decided to be quiet and think of another way to show her what was going on. I had a plan. If Clara could just notice some of the weird things Nadia was doing, maybe she would understand why I was so upset. Over the next few days, I paid close attention to Nadia whenever she was around. Most of the time, she seemed normal, but sometimes she did small things that were strange, like talking quietly to herself, or stopping suddenly, as if listening to something no one else could hear. Whenever Nadia did something odd, I made sure Clara was there to see it. I didn't say anything. I just hoped Clara would start to notice these things on her own. My goal wasn't to scare Clara or spy on Nadia, but just to help Clara see what was bothering me so much. Clara kept a close eye on Nadia, noticing more of the strange behaviors I had pointed out. Nadia's quiet muttering and sudden pauses became increasingly apparent. I could see Clara's initial skepticism begin to fade, and she started to believe that something unusual was indeed happening. Seeing this shift, I decided to take further action. I began recording Nadia's odd behavior on my phone, capturing moments that might prove she was whispering intentionally. Each time Nadia exhibited strange behavior, I discreetly recorded it, collecting several recordings showing her speaking quietly to herself, pausing mid-task as if listening to something, and moving her lips without making a sound. One evening, after a particularly stressful day, I went to the bathroom to wash the day off. The whispers had been persistent since I got home, and I needed a break. I set my phone on the bathroom counter, unintentionally leaving it recording as I tried to gather my thoughts. The whispers started again. My heart raced. It felt like Nadia was right outside, whispering directly at me. I tried to focus on the sound to catch any clear words or phrases, but it was difficult to distinguish anything specific. After a few minutes, I left the bathroom, and the voices went away as suddenly as they had begun. I picked up my phone, stopping the recording without thinking much of it. It wasn't until later, out of sheer desperation to find some proof, that I reviewed the video and made a startling discovery. In the recording, I could hear the sound of the bathroom door creaking softly. The noises started again, clearer this time, and unmistakably, it was Nadia's voice. She was whispering just outside the bathroom door. My heart pounded as I listened, playing the recording again to make sure I wasn't imagining things. There was no doubt about it. Nadia was whispering to mess with me, and now I had proof. The realization hit me hard. I wasn't losing my mind. Someone was intentionally trying to make me think I was. Now that I had this evidence, I felt like it was exactly what I needed to prove to Clara that I wasn't crazy and finally get back on track with my psychiatrist. What I was experiencing was real, Nadia's whispers weren't figments of my imagination. I decided to gather more evidence as the days progressed. Eventually, one evening, I mustered enough courage to show Clara the recordings. She watched closely, her expression shifting from concern to shock as she saw the evidence. The videos showed Nadia muttering while cooking, stopping abruptly in conversations, and speaking softly to no one. Clara's face grew pale as she processed what she was seeing. I felt the tension between us ease as we finally understood one another. We decided to confront Nadia with the evidence the next evening. After dinner, we asked her to join us in the living room. Clara began the conversation gently, expressing concern for Nadia's well-being and mentioning that we had noticed some unusual behavior. Nadia looked anxious as I showed her the recordings. Her composure started to crack. Her hands began fidgeting, and her eyes darted around the room, avoiding our gaze. After watching the recordings, Nadia finally broke down when Clara gave her a moment to explain herself. Her voice was barely a whisper, as she admitted to whispering outside the bathroom door, in the kitchen, at dinner, and every other time. She acknowledged that she had been deliberately trying to mess with me, looking ashamed. Clara pressed her for the reason behind her actions, needing to understand why Nadia would do something so cruel. The urgency in Clara's voice grew as she demanded an explanation, losing patience with her sister. Nadia hesitated, struggling to find the right words. Finally, she confessed that she believed it wasn't safe for her to live in the same house as me because of my schizophrenia. She explained that she had read about the condition and felt convinced I could become dangerous. Her whispers and strange behaviors were an attempt to protect herself by pushing me to seek more intensive treatment or to leave the house. Clara listened, unable to comprehend why Nadia had chosen such a hurtful way to address her concerns. The revelation that Nadia's actions were driven by fear didn't absolve her of responsibility. Clara took a deep breath, trying to process everything. She told Nadia that while she understood her fear, her actions were unacceptable. She asked if Nadia understood the amount of harm she'd caused. Clara's voice wavered as she expressed the pain and stress the situation had caused both of us, emphasizing that trust had been broken. Nadia had tears in her eyes, apologizing repeatedly. She expressed regret for her actions, admitting she hadn't fully understood the impact of her behavior and was genuinely sorry for the pain she had caused. She promised to seek help for her own issues and to work towards making amends. After Nadia's confession, Clara and I knew we had to make a tough decision. Nadia's actions had caused a lot of pain and mistrust, and despite her apologies and efforts to seek help, the damage was too significant to ignore. Clara decided it was best for Nadia to leave our home. The next morning, Clara asked Nadia to join us in the living room. Nadia looked worried, sensing something serious was coming. Clara calmly explained that her behavior had deeply affected our lives and that we could no longer have her stay with us. Nadia listened, looking sad and resigned, understanding the consequences of her actions. But her expression quickly shifted from worry to anger. She became agitated, her face contorting with rage as she accused us of using her and abandoning her, just like her ex-boyfriend had done. Clara remained calm, though it was clear she was struggling to maintain her composure. Nadia's anger grew more intense. She insisted she had nowhere else to go and that we were her only family. The tension in the room was palpable, each word sharpening the divide between us. I stood by, feeling a mix of emotions. I understood her fear and anger, but the trust had been too deeply broken. Clara, though clearly affected by Nadia's words, stood firm. She conveyed that this decision was about ensuring a safe and healthy environment for everyone. Nadia's outburst didn't change the necessity of our decision. Her accusations were painful to hear. But we knew we had to follow through. Clara remained resolute, even though I could see how hard it was for her to kick her sister out. She told Nadia that this was for the best. After the conversation, Nadia stormed off to pack her belongings. The atmosphere was tense, and the silence that followed her departure was heavy. Clara helped her sister pack, the process marked by awkward, strained silence. I stayed out of the way, feeling a mix of relief, guilt, and sadness. Nadia's departure was good for us, since her entire time here had been stressful. But it also saddened us at the loss of a family connection. When it was time for Nadia to leave, Clara walked her to the door. Clara went in for a hug, but Nadia shoved her aside, her anger still simmering beneath the surface. She turned to me, her eyes indicating she wasn't done with me yet. She mouthed something, but I couldn't quite make it out. Once Nadia left, the house felt empty. The silence that once felt suffocating now felt peaceful. Clara and I focused on repairing our relationship, and she cut all contact with Nadia.